Hello, good day. Welcome to another episode of Faith Walk. The last time I spoke about Abraham and we drew lessons from why God tested. Today we're drawing lessons from Moses. Now, over the years growing up, I've heard of Moses as a great leader. His shortcomings have been highlighted, but today, this morning in particular, while I was studying, I had mentioned I was going through the Bible in a year, so I'm in Exodus now, and something struck me. Um, Moses stressed God though. He so I mean, so let me explain. And 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 the reason why it's important to note is that when God makes a promise, yes, the fact that He has made a promise, he's bound by himself to keep that promise. Doesn't matter the obstacles that are on the way or the people that we might not be available, he will find a way to ensure that he keeps that promise. Now, referencing the story of Abraham, God had told Abraham that he would give him nations as descendants and he would give them a particular land, the promised land, Canaan. The land of Canaan would belong to his descendants. Now, fast forward, Joseph um, being in Egypt, Jacob, a descendant of Abraham, has moved the family to Egypt. And 400 years later, there's a new king who doesn't know Joseph. That is extremely. I, I wondered how they would not know Joseph 400 years later. Egyptians must have had a really bad record keeping process. Like, this person saved the country from a period of famine. Like, he should be in the records. But anyway, another king arose, as the Bible said, that did not know Joseph. And so he just saw the multitudes of descendants of Joseph and his family of Jacob, Israel. I'm like, oh, these people, they're not Egyptians by blood, they're not Egyptians by birth. They can just, side with another nation and fight us and win because the Israelites, the really busy people, reproducing. So by that time, they were in hundreds of thousands. In fact, by the time they left Egypt, the Bible said that there were 600,000 men. Now, that's not counting women and children. So imagine over 500,000 people. Obviously, the king has, right to be afraid. So now they turn them into slaves. There's quite a number of people, so putting them to work would be of good economic value to Egypt. Building different things as the pharaohs were deciding at the time, and the there was no labor law, no. So the conditions were really harsh and not very very pleasant. And even with all these conditions, the Israelites were still blossoming. You understand? Not blossoming like skin glowing and all of that, but they were still reproducing. Their numbers were not dwindling. It was because it's a covenant thing. God had put that seed of His promise through Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. So they will continue to reproduce into descendants, into multiples of people, as many as the stars of heaven. So there's nothing any king or anyone could do to stop it. He went as far as wanting the firstborn sons to be killed, or yeah, when they're born, or sons in general actually, to be killed immediately they are born. They found a way around it. So the children were still surviving. And with all of this, obviously the Israelites were crying out to God. Now, the good thing about the Israelites is they had a very good process of record keeping. Stories were being passed down over and over again. So every Israelite probably most likely knew about Abraham, knew about Isaac, knew about Jacob. Because in fact, obviously they knew about Jacob because they were all the tribes of Israel. Israel was Jacob. So I mean, obviously at this time Abraham is like a great, 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 great grandfather. Yeah. But they knew of the story, so they knew of God. And so they started crying out, oh, hardship. It's really hard. It's really difficult. And so God heard. You know, I was asking God. I haven't gotten an answer yet. And did, did you have to take 400 years to hear? Or perhaps they were okay. They were living in. They were not living such a harsh life until after some years, like the Bible said, Pharaoh arose that did not know Joseph. So I presume before then they were living a sengemenge life, like a chilled life. So they complained, and God heard. I want to believe Abraham was looking at God in heaven like, my descendants, what's the plan? They're suffering. I mean, all jokes. And God heard and said, okay, who am I going to use? And he said, okay, Moses. Now, Moses, sort of in a prime position, he's Hebrew, an Israelite, from the tribe of Levi, lived in the palace, so he knows about the Egyptian kind of thing. He knows Pharaoh. Murderer though, he ran away, so he seemed primely positioned. He had lived with the Egyptians. He didn't really live. No, he didn't really. He hadn't lived with the Hebrews, but he was Hebrew by birth, and so he sort of was like in the middle. Yes, to be able to connect both nations and sort of bring about a proper negotiation. You understand? Now, God searches out Moses where he is in the wilderness and proceeds to talk to him. Oh, I am this. In fact, I think it's from, I'm going to look at the Bible now, from Exodus 3, yes, and from verse 7, and he talks about how he has seen all the things that are happening to the Israelites, and he has heard their cry. He's sending Moses to the king of Egypt, and then Moses just says, I am nobody. How can I go? That's the first one. And then God says, oh, I will be with you. And then Moses says, secondly, when I go to Israelite, who do I say sent me? Yeah. What is your name? And then God takes out time to explain who he is to Moses. I am had sent you. Tell them the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is my, and he breaks it down and say, oh, I'll tell them that I've heard their cry and all of that. I will use my power. And then Moses now says, suppose they don't believe. Hey God, a third time. I said, what is wrong with brother Moses? He was stressing God. God now says, okay, you need signs, you need wonders. Throw your stick on the ground or staff, it will turn into a snake. Do this and prove to the Israelites. And he gave him another sign, put your hand in your robe, bring it out, leprosy, and leprosy gone, and all of that. And then he says, um, I mean, if they still don't believe after these two, take some water from now, turn it into blood. They should believe after three signs. And then Moses says again, number four, the fourth time, no, Lord, don't send. I cannot speak. God has shown me a burning bush. He has explained who he is. I am. This he has talked about the promise. He has talked about the land he's taking them to. He's giving you signs and wonders. Then you say, oh God, don't send me. And God is like, had it been, if not for this promise that I made to Abraham, my mind, I'm thinking God, like, you know what, I'm done. But he made a promise that he would give that land to Abraham's descendants. And he had to keep it. He had to keep it. So, um, and then he says, no, so this is Exodus 4 and verse 10. But Moses says, no, Lord, don't send me. I have never been a good speaker. I haven't become one since you began to speak to me. I'm a poor speaker. And he goes ahead to call out all his flaws, his weaknesses, and why he shouldn't do it. And the Lord said, who gives man his mouth? Who makes him deaf or dumb? Who gives him sight or makes him blind? It is I, the Lord. Now go. I will help you to speak. I will tell you what to say. But Moses answered again, no, Lord, please send somebody else. Moses stressed God. Sir, I know you are listening where you are. You were, well. And verse 14 says, at this the Lord became angry. He reached for the Lord to be angry. He became angry with Moses and said, "What about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know that he can speak well." And so it's like sometimes, and this is one of the lessons I draw out. Sometimes we're so, and it's not that we're supposed to be perfect, like we're supposed to have all the qualities that we need to do what God wants us to do. But sometimes the help that we require on the journey is around us. But because we're so focused on ourselves and the things that we don't have or the things that are lacking or are not perfect, we do not even see. And so God had to tell, or has to tell Moses that, what about your brother Aaron? He can speak now, right? I know that he can speak well. In fact, he's coming now to see you and will be glad to see you. You can speak to him and tell him what to say. I'll help both of you to speak. I'll tell you both what to do. He'll be your spokesman, speak to the people for you. Then you will be like God, telling him what to say. Take this walking stick with you, for with it you will perform miracles. And I was like, God, God tried. Like he was patient, and I don't think it's just about him being patient. God promises overpower everything. And He has made promises to us as His children in the Bible, in His Word. He has made promises on our health, on our way of life, on our relationships, on wealth. He has given us promises, and those promises overpower everything. He always keeps His promises. He said, "I am who I am." He will always find a way to keep that promise. But like the Israelites called on God to remember them, we have to remind Him of the promise. Remind Him that, God, in your word, you said you will do this. I'm holding you to it, and He will come through. No one can stop Him from performing His promise. No Moses, if I may be so bold to say, can stop God's promise from being fulfilled in your life. As long as you hold Him to it and you remind Him and you cry out to Him. Yes. I also wrote here, I wrote here jokingly, Moses, I wrote here in my notes, Moses really stressed God. Oh, after all the signs and wonders, ah, I don't know that I would have done better. I can't really say. But I want to believe that if God had told me to throw my stick on the floor, it has turned to snake. He has said, put your hand in your coat, leprosy. When I bring it out, it's leprosy. Take it back and bring it out, it's gone. Instant healing. Instant. Okay, take some water from the Nile, it will turn to blood. I don't, well, I don't know. I wasn't faced with Moses' background and all of that. But I want to believe that I would believe. But he still couldn't see past himself. He couldn't see past himself. And 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 sometimes that happens to us. Even when we know of the promise, we know of what God can do. We know that the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. We know all of the things that He has said, but we can't get past ourselves, our failures, our past failures, our flaws, our humanity to see God's awesomeness and God's amazing power. Sometimes we can't see past ourselves. So, my question to you today, who or what are you looking at? You're faced with a situation. Are you looking at yourself, your power, the things you can or cannot do? Or are you looking at God, the Alpha and Omega, the omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, Yahweh? I am that I am, the first and the last, the bright morning star. Are you looking at Him? I ask you.